Vito.
Here.
Eric Jones.
Present.
Kristen Wren. The quorum is present.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda as proposed? Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as proposed? Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Davey. Yes. Vito.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Shiloh.
Yes.
Dombeck.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Our next item is audience to visitors. So thanks to everyone for coming out on this kind of miserable night with those big puddles in the parking lot that we have to wait through. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board on any issue this evening? All right, we'll move on then to the next item. Communications, correspondence, informational items. Letters and newsletters. Certainly had those. Commuter report and ISBA report. FOIA requests. No FOIA requests since our last meeting. We're on the street, that's good. Committee reports?
Did have a very brief planning and zoning meeting last night, just to clean up a couple of things, or one thing relative to the UDO, and it has to do with when you had a duplex lot that maybe gets converted into townhomes for up to 3 to 5 units. That has to go. Typically, it's always gone through planning and zoning, and then the council and everything, and we changed that to be more in line with what is happening now. So the actual officer that's reviewing the zoning documents, which would be Mr. Sauter in this case, he can do that and approve those changes without having to go through that whole long process, because it's almost always a rubber stamp. So it was all of 13 minutes long. So, and that included roll call and all the rest of the stuff. So, and then SEF, just briefly, there's an SEF meeting coming up next Monday, and we've got a grants meeting on Thursday. So, and there were quite a few submitted. I want to say 10, 8 or 10. Yeah. So that's what we got.
Very good. Other committee reports?
Sport and Senate met this past Friday. For those who don't know, Sport and Senate is a group of students, parents, and faculty at the high school. We meet usually the first Friday at about 7:15 for about 45 minutes or so. We got a lot of information, really helpful information from the student body in terms of things they were concerned with. It's facilitated by the senior class president, so she had a full-blown agenda already, and some of the topics that we discussed were blended class expectations versus reality, successes and points of improvement with blended classes. Generally speaking, it seemed like the consensus was students really liked it. The other thing was students feeling safe. Alice drills, door alarms, teaching with the doors shut. There's really a big push now to teaching with the doors shut. There seems to be concerns on both sides of that, in terms of having to open up the door every time somebody's late to class. While on the flip side, there's safety benefits to teaching with the doors closed. So there was discussion about what students felt. In general, students felt it was best to keep the doors closed. So there's going to be a review of a policy, sweeping policy across the high school to do that. The other thing that was alarming, no pun intended, was the alarms for the doors. So there are alarms on all the doors, or majority of the doors, pertinent doors at the high school, that are triggered if a student opens them. And then there's response that's had by the high school, but right now apparently it's become so commonplace that students are opening these doors when they're not supposed to, alarms get triggered, that it's dulled the senses of students for the severity of what this could mean. So the staff in the high school is responding as they should be, but students are like, it's like if a fire alarm went off every 15 minutes. Apparently they just don't see it as much of a raise for concern. So there's talk about maybe stressing the importance of not opening those doors when they shouldn't be, to try to reinstill the concern that those panic alarms should have. So there's some talk between the admin at the high school about how they can address that, Because ultimately, if students aren't concerned or panicked by it, then it's not doing its job. So it's a pretty expensive system for it to not be doing its job. Homecoming went really well. Positive incentive behavior, or PBI, is being looked at very closely by the new dean of students and assistant principal. They seem to be championing that initiative. For those who don't know, PBI is this idea of rewarding positive behavior instead of just punishing bad behavior. There's a lot of research to support that's successful, so that seemed promising. Students were really excited about that. Freshman 101, orientating freshmen on what they can expect, maybe having some mentorship in place. Really big emphasis on behavior being a big concern, and social interaction, and what we can do to try to maybe flip the script on that. And the last piece was if we should allow parents in the Spartan Senate. The first meeting we didn't have parents. Students generally felt that it was positive to have their parents attend. So, yeah, that was what we talked about.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah, all in 45 minutes. So.
Other committee reports? Okay, we'll move on then to, can we just skip this next one? IASB Legacy Award recognition.
So I'm going to jump in on this one for members of the audience. Board members are elected by the community, and like staff, like administrators, they are required to undergo some professional development, but a lot of professional development is optional. So there are some mandatory trainings that board members have to go through, Open Meetings Act training, things like that. But then board members have the opportunity to seek additional training. So just like staff, administrators, that's part of what makes you better. You learn about new initiatives that are coming out, changes in laws and things like that. So many of our board members participate in additional, the optional training that goes on. Sometimes that's done in face-to-face settings, sometimes that's done online. We were recently notified, this is why Jim tried to skip this.
Yes.
Jim has not achieved, but renewed, if I remember correctly, his legacy status as a board member because of the additional trainings that he's done. So again, it's not just Mr. Dominic who goes through that, it's all the board members who participate in additional training, but members of the public, members of staff probably don't recognize that or don't know that. So it's an opportunity for us to recognize Mr. Dominic tonight, but also an opportunity to talk about the additional training that board members go through to kind of stay on top of their game. So on behalf of the administration of the school district, thank you, Jim, and all the board members for the training that you go through, and recognize Jim for that legacy status. Thank you.
Yeah, means you're old. That's what it means. True, that's very true. Put that in the minutes. Next item then is IASB resolutions.
So in your packet, the publication of all the resolutions is in there. We did talk about them at pretty good length previously, so I'm not going to go through each and every one. It's pretty well spelled out. I'm assuming I will be the delegate again at the conference.
Yes.
Since I'll be in the room to help facilitate all that. If you have any questions or comments, you can ask me now and I'll try and answer them, otherwise shoot them to me. We're about a little over a month out from the conference. The resolutions meeting is always in the afternoon on that, or late morning, that Saturday. So I will be there to express the board's opinion if you disagree with any of the resolutions recommendations. And there was a little bit different, if you remember. There's a do adopt or do not adopt. And we don't want to be confused. We're not voting anything into law. It's just what the pursuits of our lobbyists and our organization are focused on with lawmakers and funding sources and things like that. And then you'll notice that this year there was a section called Do Not Present. And Jim had asked before the meeting, so I thought I'd clarify that a little bit. There is about 7 or so that are on there of the 19. So what would fall into that category are ones that were duplicative. So we had, I think, 3 different topics that had 2 resolutions. A couple, one agreed to combine, they took the 2 and melted the language a little bit. The other 2, the one deferred to the other. Say, I think they wrote a better one than we did. If you add this one thing in, we're good, they support it. So those would not be presented. And or items that were not fully thought through yet. A good example of that one was a style guide for general weaker language. Not that it shouldn't be addressed, and it'll probably come back next year. That's what we asked them to do, is say, hey, you're really broad here, you need to give us a focus on what it is that you are asking us to support. So we sent it back to them, so now we're going to come back next year with some additional information or do a little more work on it. And then you'll see, for example, there's 3 in there for charter schools. So we got rid of what we call affirmations that were affirming previous policy position statements. Because it was just taking a lot of time to come back and say, yeah, we still support that position, and they do it annually. It comes from one specific school district in the north side, northeast corner of the state, and they have an issue with their charter school, and what we basically said is, hey, we're not gonna, we have the policy in the position statement right now, it's not been removed, there's no need to easily update that. And the reason we really went through this process is trying to clean things up, because all of a sudden the document was getting a lot longer, and you need focus. We can't lobby for 150 things. It's a lot better to focus on 20. So we tried to clean some stuff up, take some stuff out that had been on there a long time, or had even been resolved or at least addressed at some point. So that's why that's on there in case there's any questions. So let me know. We've got more than a month. Maybe next board meeting, if we have any issues, we'll either have a discussion on it or agree on how you like me to vote or whatever. So.
I don't know if there are any items that people want to discuss tonight. It's on the agenda. But we've already reviewed these on the card. I want to commend your efforts, Steve. It takes a lot of time to do this, and you've volunteered for a long time to do this. Not just for us, but for the entire state. So appreciate the fact that you have put in so much time, and I appreciate the efforts of the committee in the sense that they refined the process so well, because it was very cumbersome. It was, we've submitted several of these ourselves over the years, and have found it to be an extremely cumbersome process. And now I think it's streamlined it quite a bit. So thank you for your service there, and thanks to the committee as well for their foresight.
Then I'll pass that on to you.
Okay, thank you. Unless there's anything else, then on it. Next item would be Assistant Superintendent for HR.
Thanks, Jim. For several months now, the board, we've been trying to find a time to invite our health staff and wanted to make sure as many of them that could be or wanted to be here could make it. So find ourselves all the way into this school year when the intent was last school year. So we've invited our health staff to be recognized for all the work that they did the last few years. I think pre-pandemic, people didn't really know what nurses did in schools. Corey's going to talk about that a little bit here in a second. But I think we still need to recognize the work they did the last few years. Entering into my position, I had no idea what was about to happen. Corey was entering into her position too. I had no idea the person I would work most closely with would be a school nurse. There's no one I can imagine being better than her or our health staff for the last 3 years. So they were asked to implement guidance. They had no idea what it was. That was constantly shifting and moving, and had to own that and be on the receiving end of oftentimes some very tough phone conversations. And I think they could run a session on customer service because they handled it, showed grace, and were unbelievable. So I know many of them are here. I would ask that they stand up to be recognized for the amazing people they are. And then we're going to hear a little bit about the exciting work they do day to day, which was also still occurring during the pandemic. None of that went away. We were able to add maybe a little bit to our staff, but they took on all that extra work, weekend work, and just handled themselves with class. So nobody better than this group. So. I I do think it's important to add too that a few of these individuals had joined us at the exact same time coming from the hospital setting. So for 2 or 3 years now, we've been saying, I promise you it's not like this outside of a pandemic. Just stick it out, stick it out. And we've had some move on, but not because they left when things got tough or during the pandemic. They always finished the year and maybe had a different opportunity, but they stuck it out, and happy to report, although a normal school year is hectic for them, and you'll hear a little bit about that, things have been much more normal, just like our teachers, I think, have felt to some extent. I know it's still difficult, but glad they stuck it out. So, Corey, this is Corey's favorite thing to do. So
before you do that, I just wanted to, on behalf of the board, say thank you to all the nursing staff, and we really appreciate the fact that you were on the firing line, because we ourselves were, I think, on the firing line somewhat, but we weren't right there in the front, and you were, and you had to take those complaints and concerns and from both sides all the time, in the midst of what was perhaps most frustrating, which Mr. Reinick referred to, which was a shifting policy. All the time, the boundary would be set, and then a few days later, it'd be moved, and then it'd be moved again, and then it would be moved again. And so it was very hard to, give people solid answers when you're faced with policy that moves around like that. And it was frustrating for the board, but I can't even imagine how frustrating it was for you who were on the front line and had to deal with that. And so we really appreciate what you were doing, and we've appreciated it for the whole period of time. And as Mr. Reinick said, we wanted to get you in here to honor you for those efforts, but because of the pandemic and because of the way scheduling was, it was difficult to get you in here until today. So accept our apologies for this belated things, but know that our hearts were with you the entire time, and we really appreciate the work that you did, because you really kept us together during those times. And so I would open it up to other board members if they'd like to comment on this, because we all kind of went through this, and we all have a particular understanding, and I think a particular appreciation for what you did for us.
From experience of working in schools, I thought nurses were, and unions were overwhelmed before COVID. So then to add that to your plate, I just thought, oh my gosh, thank you, because I know how hard you people work. I know I've seen it. I know how busy you are all the time, every day. I just can't even imagine what you went through with all of this stuff. So thank you from somebody who knows, just because I was there in the buildings and how hard you guys work all the time. So thank you for all of this.
Being married to a teacher, I heard practically every day, at least from her building, what the nurses were going through. And I know what my wife was going through, and I can't imagine how that was compounded with the contact tracing. And Jim said all the different levels of contact. It was frustrating for her, it was frustrating for us, and everything that was moving. And you guys are literally, like you said, on the front line. It was no different than being in a hospital, in my opinion, with that many people gathered in one space, even if they were spread out. So thank you for all you did. I've been adamant about wanting to have you guys in to do this. So thank you for coming. Thank you for all that you do for our schools.
Yeah, between all the communications that we received as a board from the staff and all my interactions with the elementary and middle school with the health staff that were helping my own kids and family get through this, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything that you guys have done over the last 2 years. And it shouldn't be lost that everybody was making sacrifices. You guys were certainly in the firing range of angry parents and misunderstood or confused the public on what the county was doing and the state was doing. So for navigating through that and helping us as a district come out of this better on the other side.
Well, take any part of that singularly, and it's overwhelming. Just having to make a call to a parent when this event is happening or this sporting thing is happening, you know you're not going to be able to come to that. I work in the customer service world, and that's a call I don't want to make, and I've had to make some tough calls myself. So, but all jokes aside, even having to deal with it with my own staff, a handful of people, and I'm dealing with the calls and all the other stuff, and thinking to myself, how in the world is that being managed at a school, at a district? I couldn't even imagine it, I'm 40 people, like, that's it. So, every time I get a call, I'm like, I have no idea how this is being managed, but I just appreciate, I mean, and I'd echo everything else that was said here as well, the communication as a parent that we got, trying to keep everything in line as everything was changing, just totally appreciative, and, you know, the further we get from COVID, the more we start to maybe forget about areas of it or elements of it, and just, there is a ton of work that went into it, and just super appreciative, and thank you guys for coming today. Really appreciate that.
Something I found really interesting was in the midst of all the COVID, I'd say difficulty with parents and with teachers and moving guidelines, the general consensus in speaking with everybody was the absolute professionalism that the nursing staff had. Like and the people I've spoken to on all sides of opinions that they had, one like sound foundational piece was to have the conversation as well. The nurses, they had a really strong, like, this was stable, like, they had no complaints about the nursing staff. Oh, they made this very clear, like, that was always the baseline anchor, and then from there they had, you know, problems, issue. But gosh, on those calls, or like talking with people, you could count on the fact that they would say, well, but the nurses were great, so it was like, okay, so not all bad, like, there is some good in this. So thank you for that, for the glimmer of hope in what was a lot of very, very unfortunate and difficult conversation.
I know that Chris Wren would echo all of those comments if she were able to be here this evening. Unfortunately, she's not, but on her behalf, I would echo her thanks as well, because I know just from discussions that we had as a board that that's where she's at as well, that she was very appreciative. So once again, we said it from the bottom of our hearts, thank you very much for everything you did to hold us together and us in line and handle all the things that you had to handle and do it with such professionalism and grace. So thank you. So again, I would ask everybody to please
Alright, it's okay if I just stay right here by my people, in case I pass out. Perfect night,
You're good to go.
right? Thank you.
You can do no wrong.
Yeah. Thank you for your kind words, it's very appreciated. I did, for the sake of time, just write this out, I'm just going to read through it. So I know you've got other important things on your agenda as well tonight, but thank you for the opportunity to be able to come before you tonight. So, board members and admin team, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you tonight as a representative of this great staff that you just mentioned. I do want to take this time to give you a brief overview of what our health staff does in a normal year in a school setting, but just first a brief history lesson. The first school nurse, Lana Rogers, she was hired in New York City in 1902 to care for just over 8,600 students in 4 schools. Shortly after her hire, school officials noticed that absenteeism reduced significantly in those schools, and they hired 12 additional nurses, and within 1 year, absenteeism was reduced by 99%. Over the last 120 years, school nursing, which falls under the umbrella of public health nursing, has become more comprehensive and includes things like surveillance, prevention, emergency preparedness, disease management, health education, and case management. And at the core of all of these tasks, the primary focus continues to be keeping students healthy and present in schools in order to maximize academic success. So what does this look like for us here in Sycamore 427? This is not an exhaustive list of our duties, but it will give you a good glimpse into what we do day to day. In the last several decades, we have seen an increase in the number of medically fragile students and students with chronic health conditions in our schools. Here in Sycamore, we currently manage 2,669 documented student health conditions that include things like seizure disorders, cardiac disease, diabetes, ADHD, asthma, severe allergies, and numerous syndromes. We also meet the health needs of any student or staff who come to the health office for care throughout the course of the school day. And already this year, I've logged 8,758 unique student health office visits. We are responsible for several state-mandated processes, including performing vision and hearing screening at all levels across the district, and the collection, documentation, and reporting of the required health information. We are part of the related services team, and we work to support special education students based on their health needs. We also work closely with our school social workers to help provide social and emotional support to our students. We connect families to resources in our district and our community, and for some, the school nurse may be the only health professional that a student sees over the course of the school year. We also coordinate with the local health department with reporting trends and illnesses, and occasionally get to navigate a global pandemic. As I was preparing to speak to you tonight, I did ask our health staff to tell me the best and most challenging things about working in a health office, and I'd like to share a few of their comments with you. Like with every job, there are challenges. The inevitable recess and lunch rush of students, being the messenger of bad news to parents. Every day is different, and the majority of our visits are unscheduled, so it can be complicated to complete a task from start to finish. Other staff understanding our roles can sometimes feel like we're on a bit of an island in the education world. And of course, we can't get through a list of challenges without mentioning the last couple of years. COVID essentially brought everyone to our island. It did feel a little bit like we were participating in a tough mudder that we did not sign up for. But we did it. We completed it. We made it out of the mud. We're busy cleaning up the messes and the aftermath that were left behind, but we are busy doing the normal day-to-day things, and that was very refreshing. Getting them done in August and September and October instead of April and May. One of our health staff said, during this time we have grown as a family, as health staff. We've been through a lot these past few years, and we know that we can all lean on each other when needed. And that's a great transition to the best parts of working in our health offices. Some things that our staff loves is the continuity of care that we are able to have with students as we follow them throughout their educational experience. Middle schoolers are incredibly entertaining. The flexibility and the amount of time that we get to have at home with our kids. We are a very young staff. We have 21 students that are enrolled in Sycamore amongst the health staff. So we're stakeholders on multiple fronts, which is great. But that schedule is unique in the healthcare world to be able to follow our kids' schedules. Overwhelmingly, which will be no surprise to you, our health staff said that the best part is working with our students. Making meaningful connections with students and their families, being able to help them, being a positive part of their day, making them feel safe and cared for when they're away from home and have needs. One nurse said, one of the best parts is seeing these kids grow from when I started until now. Some of them have been a big part of my life, and I like to think that they know that I'm always here for them even after they graduate and move on. And then I would add, it's an unbelievable privilege to work alongside this great group of individuals. I work with a lot of nurses, and this group is top tier. And I know I can speak confidently on behalf of our nurses that we could not do this job without our health assistants. They are critical to our success. And I want to thank you again for the opportunity to have the invitation to come here tonight, for recognizing our staff, and for the opportunity to share with you the important role that our school nurses and health staff play in the health and educational outcomes of our district community.
Does anyone have any questions for Corey? The last thing I would add is over the last 2 years, Corey and I were talking so many times throughout the day, every night, all weekends, trying to navigate staff and other things. And we became very close, but I think she would echo this. We're very pleased to not be talking very much this year. It's kind of been nice because it means progress. So it's been good transitioning to a different working relationship. Much healthier one.
I never hesitate for students, not for my.
Yeah, that's right. So the next thing I have is our next school presentation. So tonight we're obviously in North Grove. I see a lot of North Grove staff, which is awesome. I've actually had the opportunity to do lunch recess duty for North Grove staff this year, to be in some classrooms reading. They didn't tell me it was 97 first graders, so I might have lost a few or felt like I was going to. But this staff's amazing. We have a new principal here, Jay Countryman, who's done a great job. So he's here to talk about his staff and the things going on in North Grove. So welcome, Jay.
That is about as impossible to follow. So I'm going to give it a shot. We talked a lot. You'll see a lot in a lot of the teachers' rooms about the power of yet. So I'm just going to leave it that. I don't know how to use this board yet. This is one of something we're trialing right now, and will be around to many of the elementaries or all the elementaries the time it's said and done. But I have Mrs. Curlin here who doesn't work. She's the expert so far. So it's worked so far so good, but it is it's a clever touch board. So our kids are getting to use it and try to break it and do everything they possibly can during this process in the technology office. So I would hope that you guys can turn and watch and see some of this as we go along. So I'll be up here kind of being a little bit interactive on it, but trying not to screw up as well. Just welcome. It's a pleasure, the first time in front of the board. For me, it is a pleasure this year after coming off of a couple of years being an administrator where there was a real struggle, as we just talked about, in many different ways. This is nice. It's nice to be back and see kids coming in every day happy and not worried about, what's going on at home and who may be sick or who we have to care for that day and those sorts of things. It's kind of back to school as normal with a few caveats that are still kind of holding over from that experience for many of our kids. So 477, that last count, smiling students entering the building every day, along with 63 staff members and a few more great volunteers, Mr. Randy one day coming over and helping out, but we've also had some grandmas decide to help us out on a daily basis in the lunchrooms. That has been awesome to see the community come together and know that we were struggling to kind of find some people to start the year to be fully staffed. They've done a great job. Who doesn't like seeing their grandma helping out at lunchtime coffee? Yeah, so I kind of took the opportunity, being new, to look at our strategic design and visions within it, and then as I was kind of going through and looking at what was going on at North Grove, kind of make some connections to show, I know Mr. Wilders talked about it, Mr. Rice has talked about it, as we progress and look to be innovative and continue to grow, we are already doing a lot of really, really good things in a number of areas. And so I just kind of took this as the background and ran with it and saw what are we doing here at North Grove already that hits our district visions. And so that learning vision is all about what learning is like from a learner's perspective. And we've talked and moved a lot to what can we do to create a comfortable environment and really that cozy feel to our learners so that they're the most comfortable and feel safe in the student environment that they have in the classroom for what's best for their learning. So you'll see all kinds of stuff on here. We have some students sitting in this picture. There's some flexible seating that we have, some flexible seating up here. And then just how our students learn and celebrating learning. This is a Hall of Fame with a red carpet, so a little bit different way of thinking about how we teach. It's not students in rows, it's not, the technology is all over the place, and students maybe picking out a little bit what's their best learning style and applying that to the setting that they're in. What does their environment look like? And not just saying, hey, you can sit in this comfy seat because you like it, but really truly having those conversations with kids of, yeah, you might like that seat, but is it your best learning choice? And what works for you and what works for your friend might be very different, and that's okay. And having those discussions with our students. And that continues to happen more and more, along with the process of learning and what that looks like for our kids and how it can be different. And that be okay for those kids to learn in different modalities. And then what their product looks like at the end. So we might be able to change how they show what they know, and we'll get into that a little bit as we go along too. So learner opportunities, how we help our learners learn, and I really want to highlight a couple of key people, but also groups across the district on this slide. Differentiated opportunities are hugely important. Student-led opportunities are important. So a student over there sharing in front of the whole class, but a little probably different way than you've seen in the past. They're not standing in front reading or anything like that, but they're showing how they chose to learn under an elbow or a projector so that their classmates can all see it alongside the assistance of a teacher. But looking at different uses of whiteboards and things like that. But specifically, I wanted to highlight the MTSS staff that we have, not only in this building, but across the district, and the support they provide not only our kids, but also our teachers. Working really closely with our math and reading interventionists and specialists to ensure really targeted intervention for kids, not only with them in small groups, but also in the classroom environment. So we've sat down and talked a lot about data to start the year to guide our instructional practices as we go throughout the year. We'll continue to look at the growth and patterns of where kids are and what they need most. And we talked about we have win time, which is what I need. So that time is targeted time for each individual kid, saying, hey, this group of students needs this, they're gonna go see this teacher, this group of students needs this, they're gonna stay in my classroom. Really being flexible in how students learn and make sure that we're directing our teaching styles and what those students are learning to what they need at that point in time, and making sure that's flexible for our kids, so it's not kind of a one-stop shop and everybody gets the same exact thing, but those kids are really getting some targeted intervention. And then within that, just keeping that positive environment going and teaching our kids that failure is learning, and that is an important process and an important step along the way. You'll see the power of yet a lot of places in the building. Our staff does a great job of talking about, improvement, not perfection, and chasing, just being a little bit better, just trying and being a little bit better. We'll get there eventually. You're not there yet. When a student says something negative about their learning, it's not that you can't do that, it's that you can't do that yet, or you're not quite there yet, but let's try something else to get you to learn it. And then there's technology involved in that as well with those learner opportunities. Kids love being on devices. A little bit of that is pulling them off at times, but then how do we use that not only to do the same things we've been doing in the past and just change what's in front of them, but really be innovative in how we can change the way they learn through technology. Our learner growth area or vision, talk about assessment aligned with the learner and then feedback cycles, and I could probably go for hours on both of these things, talking about I can statements in our classrooms, and all of the research absolutely shows that the impact of teacher and student clarity on what's happening in their classroom has great impacts on learning, but then also feedback cycles and how that works. And the more we get into how students learn, the more we're seeing it's not a teacher talking to them about what they did and what to correct, but it's them learning it on their own. So the pictures here are of a classroom. This was a kind of like, I would say, a feedback party that they're getting with their peers. So they're walking around and providing feedback on these papers of just pieces of student learning. And it's not a teacher doing that and saying, you need to fix it and do this. It's kids working with each other and saying, what do you think about this? I really liked this, and starting to build on positives for kids first. And then from there going to, okay, how can we create something that's, what if we change this? The character's voice might come out more, those sorts of things. So seeing these environments and having the student interaction peer-to-peer is awesome, and I see it in a number of classrooms around the building. So I'm going to share a little bit about that. A little bit about how technology is used and what I was talking about before of just like the different ways we can use it, and how we can kind of customize learning for some of our kids in their classroom, and empower choice. So the first example on here is a young lady who is in a second grade classroom who is using Seesaw to record some of the things that she's working on. And so you'll see, I'll show her in a minute, talking through the words that she chose, and she talks about why she's doing what she's doing, and that's a piece of evidence that she will have in her portfolio, and the teacher can go back and review it at a later time. So the teacher during this time could also be working with small groups or other individual students to increase their learning, but they're also getting this from a student that just happened to be in the hallway, and I walked by and said, hey, can I video what you're doing? Here's the part where that's it. There we go. So you just see a little component there of her learning in the hallway and being able to kind of be assessed by a teacher, but there's no teacher present. So it's just another way to show how to use the technology in the classroom. Now we're really going to get into this board and see if I can. All right. So I have another friend here that I kind of interviewed. She was doing something similar and reporting on Seesaw. This is an ELA standard that she was working on of retelling. So this is a first grader kind of talking about what they're doing when they're using Seesaw and how it helps them learn. So we'll try again.
Can you tell me what you were just doing downstairs?
Retelling a story.
And what were you using to retell your story?
Our books.
How are you retelling your story in notebooks? What are you using to tell? What app are you using?
We're using a seesaw.
And do you feel like using Seesaw helps you learn?
Yeah.
How does it help you learn?
You can always learn your books and retell them.
Thank you.
Very cute. But the real impact there, I feel like,
Please tell me.
comes from the kind of the learning side of it, where she knows what she's doing, and then her goal of why she's doing it. I'm learning how to retell, and that's the clarity piece that you're looking for with kids, and then how the device itself is helping her to learn that. First grade, in super like low level of a student in their learning progression to graduate high school and going on from there, but really having that clarity in their learning and understanding is really cool. So those are just a couple ways. We also have eSpark that we're jumping into, and Freckle that we're jumping into this year that all work with our map scores, which the district has used for a long time, to guide students on some customized paths for their learning. So the tools that we have progress with the students as they move along, and so not everybody's in the same spot in the classroom. They're not all learning the same things. The teachers can then go back and say, okay, I'd like you to work on this lesson again, or I see you struggling in this area, so we're going to try an eSpark or a Freckle lesson there. But it will also customize the lessons as they go along and just react to how they're doing on their independent lessons. So that's another way that we're looking at kind of customizing learning for kids. And then just that gating feedback component and having these opportunities where kids are reporting things online and being able to gain knowledge from that. The last vision was the kind of a combination one where we're really continuing those community partnerships. There's a few listed up here, but there's many more. With the fire prevention week was this week, so we had fire department here doing some safety things, but the community is awesome and has already reached out a ton. I've worked with a bunch of people that I'm getting to know now here at the building. And then Early Act, which is an organization that's or a club that's been going on here for a long time. We're thinking how to do that and how to continue that, using that as a way to empower our student leaders. So we started some hallway helpers this week, and some of them really like the cool vest we got them. That might have been the most important, exciting part of it, but that's fine for now. We'll grow from there. But we're also working to really empower the students to show that this is their building and that it is their way to learn and it's their process to go along with it. So down here, you see a little bit about the kids messing with this board, actually, to try to look, to that future vision of what can we continue to do to expand. And then we have our friends in the middle that we have started doing through Early Act, our student announcements too.
Collaborate with individuals who wish to be your friend with no excuses. Great things are bound to happen. Don't forget, tomorrow is Wear Pink Day. Have a great day!
So just bringing that positivity and energy from the kids in the morning has been great. They all did the fifth graders did a Google form and decided which components of Early Act they would want to do this year. And so I've been slowly kind of meeting with them and talking through how they do announcements. But you heard a little bit on there of the young lady talking about collaboration as our core value for the month. And so those fifth graders are coming up with quotes every day that they'll say in the morning that have to do with the core value, and just kind of bringing that to life a little bit along with the lunch choices or what's going on that week for our students. So also parent opportunities, we're back to having some parents attend things, which has been great. We had our Running with the Hawks activity not too long ago, so that's that picture at the bottom where the kids are running and some of the parents have stopped by during their lunch hour and are walking in dress clothes. But that was a lot of fun. Kids loved it. I got to dress up as a really fast just beyond, a little bit beyond like that district vision, and a lot of those things that I just showed going on at North Grove are also going on in the other elementaries across the district. So we've talked a lot and really been collaborative ourselves as a leadership team to make sure that we're looking at it as a Sycamore education for everybody, but just highlighting that from our building perspective. Some of these are happening at North Grove and maybe not across the district, so some specific programming. Our ABLE program, Academic and Behavior Learning Environment, is a program for students that just need a little bit more support as far as structure in a classroom and what they're doing on a daily basis. And so a variety of different tools and curriculum used in there, and we work to work with those students with those special needs to get them out into the school environment and do anything we can get them to do. Mr. Durecki and Ms. Helton are awesome at what they do in making sure that we make the ABLE program truly a part of the North Grove community. Students are walking the halls doing jobs for us, stopping by the office, and doing all kinds of things for me and office staff. They do a really great job being a huge part of what we do here. The support staff in those rooms, the number of paraeducators that work in our ABLE program, they're phenomenal. They do a great job of supporting those students and really showing that they have great care for the kids in the program, along with all of our related service providers. So anybody involved in the program, from speech and language to social work, A to Z, they really do a great job, and that's something that I've noticed when I came to the building, so I really wanted to highlight it here tonight. It's a special group of individuals doing great work. Along with that, just wanted to highlight a SEF grant from last year, was part of our communication system. So those kids, there's many kids in the building, but across the district that have different types of communication needs. And so those AAC devices provide them an opportunity to be clear and present what they're thinking, even though they might not be able to speak it. They can navigate those devices, tell you what they need, tell you what they want to tell you jokes, whatever you want to hear from them. And so having like the low-tech version of one of those on our playground is great. It just got put in this last week. So not tonight probably, but eventually you can wander back there and see it's a big board where they can come and kind of point to different words and things and put phrases together so that we can communicate with them clearly on the playground as they're running around and playing out there too. Any student that might have one of those communication needs. Last thing, I talked a little bit about the hallway helpers component of this. We're also working towards some team leaders, so creating teams across the building that will be led by our 5th grade students, and part of that early act piece where they would focus on whatever our core value is for that month and get to meet with a group that's all the way through 5th grade and really have a sense of community and leadership within that, but also create a tight-knit feel within the building with 480 kids in the building. Sometimes some of our younger students can feel a little bit alone. So having someone that's older, that knows the building, that understands what's going on, that they have a connection to, we look forward to being an awesome component of what that can do. So hopefully we'll see that grow this year and then have it in place next year as well. Our 4th grade student podcast, I love they come to the office once a week and record right next to me, and I've tried to sneak in there and like record them recording, and they don't like that. So I don't have a video of them doing it, but they're really funny. It's just a new way to communicate with parents, and I think anything that's a little bit more interactive, where you can listen to it while you're walking your dog or while you're driving in the car, any of those things is a great way to get our parents here, and they're always up for hearing from their own children. So that's a good way to do it, and props to the 4th grade team for putting that together. One more thing on here, we have implemented good news calls of the day. This is one of my favorite things to do, and teachers have been awesome. They've taken to it. They nominate kids. I bring them down. We call their parents. Sometimes their parents think they might be in trouble, but we talk about the awesome things that they did. They go home with a little certificate, and we always take a selfie. So that's a little collage of me with some very excited students to get the good news call of the day. And some of them did fool their parents thinking they were in trouble. So they like that and they have a good time. Definitely one of the most fun parts of the job, for sure. So that's North Grove in a nutshell, but if you have any questions, here's the task. And I didn't mess up the board that much.
You're a great job, Jay, countrymen. It's nice to see you in this leadership role.
A little different.
Really nice job.
What you made your biggest adjustment coming to elementary?
I think just the difference in systems, you know, and learning Sycamore systems as a whole, but besides that, the day-to-day stuff is very similar, and, you know, the student interaction is my favorite, and so that's just, so it's been fun. I get it.
So Jake, real quick,
Mhm.
so North Grove, about 20–25% bigger than every other elementary school. Meanwhile, though, there's still just one principal, right? And something that is not
Sure you want to
lost.
go down there?
No. What I find really interesting though is the amount of substitute teaching that principals do on a day-to-day basis, while at the same time the expectation is to fulfill all the responsibilities you described. And so I can't help but wonder, with so many more staff and still just the one position, how do you find you're managing your day-to-day, having, and I'm assuming, I mean, again, I'm not going to put you on the spot, how much time you spent subbing this week, but I imagine it's probably more than other principals. So can you speak to that? Or?
Yeah, I don't know that it's more. I think that's been a common theme across the district, even in our meetings, because it doesn't necessarily, I mean, the amount of staff does impact that for sure, but it sometimes it kind of equals itself out, the number of subs that are possible at your building. Because some substitutes like one building over another, or they're just comfortable there, than maybe they have taught there in the past. So I would say it's a more of a global, not just a Sycamore problem, but more of a global problem. And it does impact the day-to-day. When you think about, you can't, obviously you can't leave a classroom of 25 kids with no teacher. And so I think the staff has been very understanding when it comes to that, of like, I have to move a meeting with you because I'm subbing today. They get it, they understand it, but it's a difficulty, but it's a reality. So I appreciate the support that we've gotten in trying to problem solve what that looks like, whether it's asking ourselves why aren't we taking more jobs at our buildings, our elementary buildings, or looking at ways to be creative to incentivize subs to come to the district. We've kind of been in conversations as an admin team about that. And so I have noticed that recently that seems to be starting to pick up and get a little bit better. So I think there's some hope there that things will continue that direction. But yeah, it's a reality, and it is hard.
Are you seeing a lot more positions unfilled on the para side of things than you are on the grade, like the teacher side of things? Or support staff?
Yeah, it depends on kind of the specific roles that there are. Right now, we're lucky; we're almost fully staffed. It did take a little bit through the year to kind of progress, and I don't know if people were waiting to kind of see what the COVID environment was going to be like. That's a possibility. It's a guess. I don't know. But I wouldn't say that one is more difficult than the other. I would say those certified staff positions usually are more sought after or looked at as a career role for people, whereas some of the paraeducator positions might be some teachers that are still in training or someone who's looking to see if they want to be a teacher. So there tends to be a little bit more turnover in those positions at times. But we have excellent paras across the board, so some people love that role and really embrace it. And so I appreciate them greatly as well. So I think it just depends. It's kind of hard to say, really.
Thanks, sorry, I'm trying to
put
you on the spot.
You're all good.
I appreciate what you're doing, and again, I just, in knowing what I've seen, it's like, man, I can only imagine what like a day in a principal's life looks like, that we talk about what the nursing staff do. But even an all too present reality now seems like just this shortage is really stretching the goal.
Yep, for sure. Anyone else?
staff that turned out for support here on this rainy night. Appreciate that. And thanks for all that you do, day in and day out for us. Appreciate that. The next item then is superintendent's report.
Good evening. I've got 2 items under superintendent's report. The first one is approval of revised graduation dates. We've had a lot of conversation about this. And as a result, Mr. Carlson and I are recommending that the graduation date be moved to Sunday, May 28th. It will be held in the field house at Sycamore High School. It will be held at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on that day. Just the board. Because it was approved by the board already, just need the board to approve that change in date.
Is there a motion to approve the change in graduation date as proposed?
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion. There's no other conflicts on that day?
As we've talked about before, we've gotten some concern about the staying in the field house, and changing the date. At the end of the day, this is a situation we're not going to make everybody happy, but I think we've answered the concern that was raised. Again, I apologize that all the information was given to the board in advance. It's my responsibility. We'll do our best to minimize conflicts, but we're not aware of any school-sponsored conflicts on that day, no.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing we're looking for, school-sponsored.
Yeah, I think I made the short-sighted comment the other week that I hadn't received any emails or discussions from the public that were in favor of keeping it on Friday. We did finally get one this week, so I have to retract that statement. We do now have another controversial situation like we've had in the last 2 years, but I think our discussion was good the other week, that there's a lot of sentimental reasons at least to keep it on campus and at the original time and place where it had been historically pre-COVID, so I'm still in support of that until we have a better reason not to.
Well, I'm in support of moving the date, but I like the Convo Center as a location better. But that's a further discussion that we can get availability at some point in time on a Sunday. And I would like to apologize to those people who made plans based on our earlier approval of the graduation date, but hopefully this is enough advance warning that they can change those plans. And, I know it's not going to be easy, but I apologize for that inconvenience that they have to go through. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries.
The last item under superintendent's report has to do with future focused items. The board knows this, members of the audience may or may not know this. The first meeting of every month, we try to focus on something related to the future. This isn't necessarily an initiative that the district is implementing. It's just something to give the board some opportunity for discussion, opportunity for thought. I take suggestions from the board. So sometimes that's the topic of future focus, sometimes it's something that I've come up with or something that I picked up at a recent conference, which happens to be the case tonight. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about grow your own teacher programs and how school districts are addressing the staff shortage, not just for teachers, but staffing shortages in a variety of areas. So I just want to highlight how drastic, and this is just one statistic. Actually, Jim and I attended a conference last, almost a year ago. We put it back in February where Professor Kamice presented a teacher shortage as well as administrator shortage survey and study that they had done. This is just one statistic that I had received from a colleague recently. In 2015, there were 55,000 requests to take teacher certification tests. 55,000. In 2022, there were 5,500. 90% decrease, at least in interest in taking the test. And that doesn't mean it just has to do with requests to take certification tests. It's not necessarily graduates coming out of programs, but I can tell you the conversations with leaders across the state, those numbers reflect are very similar to the number of additional programs. The shortage in staffing in Illinois is not going away. It's not going to get significantly better anytime soon, in my opinion. So this is something that the school districts have faced for a while. The second bullet point, staffing shortages in K-12 schools have gradually been getting worse over the years prior to the pandemic. I was part of a conversation, and many educators were part of conversations where we talked about the teacher shortage that was coming, the administrator shortage that was coming, the bus driver shortage that was coming. That was kind of coming gradually over the years until COVID hit. And then the bottom fell out almost all at once. So COVID-19 was really a catalyst of the staffing shortage. There have been some improvements in some of our employee groups. So, for example, the paraprofessional group, non-certified staff, we've seen an increase in applicants for those positions, so that's been great. We've not necessarily seen those go across the board. Across the state, schools are looking at creative ways different ways to recruit staff. So one of the initiatives I'm going to talk about tonight is grow your own programs. These take different forms. So they can come in a variety of different initiatives or programs. Maybe a little hard to read, I apologize for that. One example is that high school and middle school students participate in future teacher programs may take the form of Future Teachers of America. Students may have opportunities for teacher assistants. They may be involved in CTE classes, so career technical education classes, vocational classes. KTC, which is the cooperative in our area, sponsors or provides classes for early childhood, where high school students can take that class and get some time working with students in that kind of setting. Other examples include supporting non-certified staff who are seeking their teacher endorsement. So it might be a paraprofessional who's working in a school, wants to become a teacher, supporting them, doing that in tuition waivers or other reimbursement models. Some of our teaching staff are seeking additional endorsements for different certifications. They may be general education classroom teachers, wants to become special education classroom teachers. So it may be existing teaching staff providing tuition waivers for them, or in other school districts, reimbursement models to encourage them to go back to school and get additional certifications. There are partnerships with a variety of different partners. Vendors, colleges, universities may provide graduate level micro-credentials, maybe graduate level coursework that culminates in teaching or paraprofessional license endorsement. And the last bullet point I put up there, this is certainly not an exhaustive list. There are other models and programs that schools are implementing. But one of them is just posting student teachers. Some school districts, for whatever reason, maybe due to past experiences, just kind of have an aversion to that. But when you host student teachers, those student teachers can become future employees in your school district. And one of the things I've done over the years is that it's kind of a year-long or semester-long interview for those folks. So when they're student teaching in your classroom, you see them in action. One of the interview techniques that I've used in the past is have candidates come in and just interview with the committee, but then they actually get time in front of the class, students teaching a concept, so you see them in action. With student teachers, you see them every day for an extended period of time interacting with students and colleagues and parents. So just about 5 bullet points there, different ideas that some school districts are implementing to try to grow their own staff from within the school district or the community. So you may notice that some of those things are underlined. And the last bullet point explains that the initiatives, the programs that are underlined on this slide are actually things that Sycamore is already doing and it's had in place for some time. So, and not necessarily new, these are things we've had in place for a while. Always having conversations and open to new ideas and how we can recruit staff, whether it's from within our school district or from outside of our school district. But again, the staffing shortage is not going to go away. It's not anytime soon. So I think school districts need to continue to be creative in how they can recruit staff, and grow your own initiatives is just one of those models. So I believe this is 2 last ones. Again, not likely to improve anytime soon. We've implemented several of those initiatives, but I am open to conversation and discussion as well.
Steve, on this, and put time into it too, I genuinely believe this is probably the greatest concern that our district has to face in the next couple of years is staffing. It worries me beyond belief. I think that if we don't work on this and we don't build this like you've made an emphasis on, it really could hurt this, it could hurt certain outcomes. You don't have teachers, you don't have staff filling positions, you have people who are stretched thin, you have burnout. I'm so happy to see that this is front and center. I'm really hopeful that we can come up with something at least that can draw more people in. Really like the idea of, like you talked about, having the student teachers come in, partnering with local colleges, doing the micro-credentialing, if there's something like that that can build it out. But the other piece too, I think, is culture. So I know that Sycamore, I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I think Sycamore is one of the most amazing places to live and hopefully to work. And people see that in the community. But if there's any other way we can support the culture of our staff, that just going to the new hiring seminar and seeing the teacher-driven band and seeing the archway and the high fives and sitting with some of the new teachers and staff and kind of that nervous excitement they had, like that was awesome. That was really neat. That's something that I don't think a lot of people appreciate. Like, this is a workplace for people, and so it needs to have a really positive culture. So yeah, I'm all for this and eager to hear what other ideas you have the board has. So
yeah, I appreciate that. The culture's big is that coming off of the pandemic and some of the other challenges we faced, that we thought was really important to really hit that mark at the beginning of the school year. And we did that across the district, but that's a huge piece. I think Sycamore remains a destination workplace. I think there are educators who want to come to this community for a variety of reasons, so we'll continue to try to maximize that. And we'll continue to kick around new ideas. One of the recent, and I didn't put it on this presentation, one of the recent ideas, and we were just talking about this the other day, we haven't been able to go to job fairs for a while. COVID really limited that. A lot of times you really hold these job fairs for all these K-12 schools come to their location, and student teachers get to walk through and look at all the different districts. And one of the recent sessions I heard at the conference was that school districts aren't waiting to go to job fairs; they are inviting students to come to their community. So if you know you want to work in the Sycamore area, one of the things that we kind of kicked around here recently is let's hold our own job fair. Let's publicize that to colleges across the state, across the region, and not wait to go to a handful of schools to be kind of pitted against other K-12 school districts. Let's invite them here. If they want to come back to this area, let's take advantage of that. So it's going to take additional creativity, but I think there are things that put Sycamore in front of maybe other destinations. So we'll try to take advantage of it.
Steve, I don't remember if you read the presentation, but the Rotary presentation a month or two ago. DCDC was there with their Opportunity Unbound, and I know that's meant more toward perhaps recruiting companies to locate here, but they mentioned their website that wants to get young professionals and families into the DeKalb area for this booming economy that they're trying to build out. But that might be an interesting partnership, is getting them in on part of that message, so that in whatever their website and other publications they're putting out, that they're also promoting through that if you have a spouse that teaches, or just from a teacher recruitment standpoint in general, to tell that story of the area and why this is a great place to come teach. And I would think maybe the second challenge, maybe Steve can speak to this, is it would seem to me that there's a lack of affordable housing in the area as well. And I'd be curious to know what the city of Sycamore plans to do in the future to recruit people or recruit more growth in the housing sector that's going to be able to support those jobs.
Something else I've seen too happen, and this was just I think they did this at Kishwaukee College, but they surveyed everybody and they said, hey, is advancement in this, within this group, this cluster, something you're interested in? Do you see yourself doing that? Are you looking for other opportunities? And having just taken a survey, a community survey that went out from our new communications director, I know everybody's first response is, another survey, but I think there's a lot of merit to looking at our existing staff and our existing talent, going, what are we doing to make sure we're keeping them And do they want to grow from within? Is there some way we can track that? Is there some path? And like the micro-credentials, I think are a big piece to that. But at the same time, kind of gathering that information and knowing, okay, before somebody's walking out the door, how can we stop that from happening and fill a position, hire from within, move somebody up, and put them on a track? That kind of thing excites me, and I think you see that happening a lot in education. So I don't know if there's opportunity for that too.
I've heard of school districts doing retention survey or increases as opposed to exit surveys.
Yeah.
So just kind of reaching out to staff, opening the opportunity to just talk about what's going well, what they'd like to see improved, and just getting that feedback. So I think that's really cool.
So this trend is not unique to education. There are a lot of industries that are finding themselves in the similar position, maybe not quite as dire as that kind of statistic right now. So even in my company, we've been talking about that same topic on a number of levels, and I put a lot of thought into that and what could apply here. And it's great to encourage kids to become teachers and those types of things. I'm certainly in favor of that, but that's not going to handle a short or midterm scenario. So we've been talking about how can we be more proactive. We kind of touched on it a little bit in our recruiting, and we were just talking about a week ago. We don't have a lot of people that do leave, but when they do leave, we have an exit interview. We said, why are we wasting our time with an exit interview? What good does it do other than why they left? And that's a simple question. So we are beginning a program of stay interviews. So being proactive about, hey, so we haven't talked in 6 months. Where are you at? How are you doing? What can we do to support you? Those type of work to get people to stay, because they'll become your best salesman. And being more proactive, we do have a Smart TV, and I would think that putting together a production video or compilation of things that could be on a website that could be purposefully sent to colleges of education, saying, hey, this is a district that we're looking for good people, and we don't care if they come from Colorado or Illinois State or Aurora University or Minnesota, whatever. Let's take advantage of that and let our own students be the ones selling the school district. What we commonly hear, we heard from the teachers tonight, or from the nurses tonight, we hear from the teachers all the time that the best part about the job is the interaction with the students. And seeing that light bulb go off, or seeing the acknowledgement that their service to the student has helped them, or they appreciate it. So let the students be the sale technique, not only to create it, but in the video. It shouldn't be you necessarily, or us, or saying you should come work here. The students should be the ones telling you should come work here. This is the place we want to have you. And then the last thought that I had relative to that was, again, trying to get out of that, my phrase of getting rid of the box, not out of the box, is are there more creative ways in which we can do instruction? And it may not apply to all grade levels, that allows us some more flexibility on the number of staff that it takes to do it, so that we can continue to offer the same things or even offer more. And it probably is more relevant to middle school and high school than elementary. But is there different ways that we can deliver those? So I'm thinking more of that flex mod where we have a lecture space where one instructor can be giving that lecture for that day, and then they go to their labs. And you might still have 3 teachers each teaching the individual labs, so they get more one-on-one instruction, but that frees up time in the day to allow you to do that. And then they just rotate who's doing lectures or something like that that's more creative. I'm not trying to eliminate staff, I mean, just trying to fill the gap and not lose any of the programs, and hopefully even expand some of the programs.
Well, I think you had a really important point, and a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, maybe the staffing shortage continues, but it's at a pace where we can still manage. 10, 15, 20 years from now, I think one of the things that all schools are going to have to face is that the current traditional model is going to need to change, because there's just not going to be enough resources to support it. So I think one of the things that all schools are going to need to do is just have some conversation and think ahead. What does that look like? How can we still best support our students, and how can we manage our resources to the best of our ability to do that? K-12 education is a market that typically changes pretty slowly. and we can either be kind of waiting until that happens and then suffer from it, or at least have some initial conversations about what would we like that to look like together 20 years from now. So I think that's a really good point.
If we don't take the initiative in the long term to set our vision for what that's going to look like for us, it'll be written for us, and we're just responding.
And I would agree with you.
I also think until we make it, I mean, you're talking short term, so trying to solve the problem, but I think until we make teaching, being an educator respectful again, and putting that emphasis on, it's an absolutely wonderful job, and it's something that, you know, as everyone has said here, working with students is great, but until people realize, you know, it's such a good profession, and until we get people out there talking about what a good profession, I love the idea of future teachers of America. Back many years when I was in high school, I was in Future Teachers of America, so I know how important that kind of a thing is. It might sound trite, but it actually made you feel proud that, hey, I want to do this. This is a career I want to go into. I don't see that anywhere. I don't see anyone really pushing how important becoming a teacher is. And I think that's got to come somewhere. We have to get that going again, because you can talk about what we can do to retain teachers, but first you got to get people to be teachers. So I think, there's what we really got to get going on. I think have some good ideas there, but that's what frightens me the most. I mean, I remember when my youngest was trying to get a teaching position in Illinois, and he couldn't find one. So now he's banking. So it's like,
But, and I think because the pool has changed, in some schools are really starting to do some innovative things and think outside the box, kind of to your point, Steve. That's making it harder with a limited pool of candidates. So we're also competing with businesses who for many years you had to go into the office to work, and now those people can work remotely. It provides a lot of flexibility and freedom that the private sector didn't have for a long, long time. Very appealing. So we're fighting things like that too. We just need to, I think, continue to be creative and as forward thinking as we can to not get caught by this.
does the high school still do those Thursday morning things where they have people come and talk that are in different professions to kids that are interested?
No, that went away very quickly, so they're figuring out how to bring that back maybe in a different
It was
way.
a great thing. I mean, I'm thinking maybe if you had some people, maybe not Sycamore high school teachers, though they're wonderful, but maybe having some other people come in and talk, or having a Jane Countryman who is a Sycamore graduate come in and talk about why he went into, some stuff like that, that make kids really want to see that relevance of going into it.
Steve, can I jump in?
Absolutely.
So I think it speaks to what you're saying, Julian and Michael, where you were going, but this is me thinking out loud because this just started on Friday, the conversations about this, but we started thinking what better place to start, what better time than our own students, right? Like, let's get our teeth in them while they're here, while they're looking up to the teachers that they respect, and they want to be like you guys. So we've talked about trying to create an educator pathway, something we don't have that we could potentially dual credit. So teaming up with Kish, with Intro to Education, Intro to Special Education. We've had TA programs, but it's not necessarily only students that want to go into education. It's a student that may think something else, but they want to work with Mrs. Wheeler, so they want to be back in her classroom. But to make that part of this, we've teamed up with NIU in the past. Kathy's run that with our students, also Melanie Bickley did, but it wasn't dual credit opportunity. So if we could create this pathway that's similar to some other things we do, dual credit it, and then try and get them to come back to us, right? Like, we know students want to learn from people that understand where they're from, or that look like them, or relate to their needs. So if we can get them then, we've talked about maybe one idea, they get this golden ticket. If they go and complete a 4-year program, that guarantees them an interview with us. Doesn't guarantee them a job, but they have a chance for an interview because they completed our educator pathway. Maybe we look at next step and there's a sign-on bonus if we end up hiring our own student that started with us. Like, start to think outside the box and do those types of things. So Friday I called Tim Carlson, said, I got one more big project for you. Your last year, here it is, it's crazy, I don't know if it'll work, we gotta make some connections. Went in there yesterday to visit him, he had already called Kish, so he's already having those conversations. We think there's a way to do it, we don't exactly know what it looks like. Don't know how successful it'll be, but we start with our own students. I know that happens naturally here in Sycamore. A lot of people want to come back, but that's just been because they come to us, not necessarily because we get into them and put them through a program that kind of starts to grow them when they're in high school. So that's one idea. I don't know what'll come of it, but that's one thought that I think relates to this. So again, just thinking out loud, it may change completely, but that's a thought.
Do you want to talk at all about the HR, PR?
Yeah, so just on Thursday, or maybe this was Friday too, Lauren and I went to an HR PR thing together. It was all these discussions. You know, a lot of what people are saying is this isn't even a staffing shortage right now. You know, the worst is yet to come. When teachers start to retire, we saw the numbers of people not going into the field. So I think to Steve's point, let's start to think about this differently. But, you know, one thing that continue to hear from HR people is we're all competing over the same 8 candidates. So how do you separate yourself, whether that's sign-on bonuses or other things? It doesn't always have to be financial, but you know, showing your culture, making videos, relating to students, those types of things, we have to think outside the box. We have to set ourselves apart. And I think what we're going to start to see, and we're seeing it with administrative openings, is we have to get word out there even sooner. We probably can't wait till February or March to go looking for teachers. I think I saw Jacobs already has a principal opening posted. Lynn, you're in the crowd, so I'll call you out. We've already talked about maybe getting her position or Tim's. We had thought December 1st, that would be earlier than we ever had outside of the superintendent, but that's probably not early enough. So now I'm looking at November to get those posted to try and beat people to it. And I think we're going to have to look at something similar for teachers. So it's not all doom and gloom. It's exciting too, I think, just to be out in front of these things. And you know, the video idea that's already in the works based on Lauren and I's conversation. So we're thinking of ways to kind of promote and do things.
Nick, just commenting on some, I don't know if you shared these statistics with us, but they were front and center at board meeting a few meetings ago. And it was 10-year look, there was a 15-year look back on student enrollment. And when, at first, before seeing the statistic, I thought certainly student enrollment would have been increasing each year. But it was flat, right? It actually dipped a little bit. And when I look at those numbers, and I think like our school district, identifying our school district and student growth, we have the same number of students in our schools that we had 10 years ago. So to me, and compare that to a different school district who's managing crazy growth, to me that says the number one priority should be retention. And this is like, you know, again, Michael's sales brain going, it costs a lot more to get a new client than it does to keep an existing client. So I just think, I mean, and again, I'm all for like, let's bring them in, let's try to get people. But for a district like Sycamore, where we're seeing really not a huge need for, I don't see us in the next 10 years needing to double our staff. I just don't. I mean, unless there's this big push for personalized learning, but even still, I don't think that's going to happen. Other districts probably might face that, but not Sycamore. So then it has me scratching my head going, okay, if we reallocate resources to really pushing retention, would that be a better bet for us in what I think our community will look like in the next 10 years? It'd be a great bet if we have 3,500 students in 10 years. It'd be a terrible bet if we have 7,000 students in 10 years. But if we can look at our past, I'd say probably we can support 3,500 students in 10 years.
Well, growth is one aspect, but we have just retirement.
Yes.
Difficulties. That's just replacing, you know, the teachers that are going to be retired. Steve, what about trying to encourage the teaching profession? And I'm thinking about what could IASB be doing on this. What about a resolution that goes towards supporting a better, more robust student, loan forgiveness program for those entering the teaching profession? Because I know there are programs out there, and forgive me, I don't know the details and what deficiencies might be there, but it seems like if that's not something that IASB is even addressing, that that's something at least we could.
There was talk just this session in August about resolutions along that same line. At the same time it came up. I think we're struggling trying to get rural central southern Illinois to teach a science class or business class or anything like that. So yeah, there's a couple of districts that I think we're already talking about putting something together, but I don't think it would be a bad idea for this district to consider doing something like that. We haven't submitted a resolution in a little while, in a few years, and I would certainly help craft that in my time. whether it's a loan forgiveness or whether it's different, something different, I would be able to participate in something like that.
I just think as we talk about the competitive nature of the job market in general, obviously school districts' hands are somewhat tied. We don't have a revenue stream that we can tweak on an annual basis, say, well, we're gonna throw a bunch of compensation here or anything else to entice people from another district, from another profession, and that's a statewide issue, right? Nobody's got those levers where our hands are tied. Same with even some of the structure of the job itself. There's a lot of that that's dictated by downstate that says these are the things that go into your day, and puts some cap, I think, on the creativity that you can maybe put in there to differentiate yourself from other districts, but if we can get at least the state to acknowledge, hey, while we may have come some distance so far, there's a lot that needs to be done to make it, especially starting teachers' salaries more competitive, make it more affordable to get into the profession, and I think that goes to the affordable housing and other things. There's got to be more programs for the state to say, hey, we're not going to fund schools to actually pay for the teachers. Maybe there's some other way that we can make it more attractive.
Well, not that we're at this point right now, but I know for a fact that in Colorado, in Aspen, which is not the cheapest place in the world, probably one of the top 10 most expensive places, that they cannot be teachers because they think we're looking. And a community in Colorado is very different than a community in Illinois. And I know of a firm that is working with the school district in Aspen to not build a new school, but to build housing for the teachers. And that's part of to get them to come, because it is home. And they're not, unlike our size, maybe slightly larger budget-wise, but student-wise, actually less. So, yeah, they're going to provide them with 2,000. And some of them are going to have to answer. It's not just, a single guy or single girl that's out of school, it's a family house. So that's part of that community because it's such enormous expense. We're not at that point here.
That's kind of where I got with my earlier question about the city's plan.
Yeah,
It's something that we've got to tackle together.
Yeah, they're trying to promote as much as possible, but they have control in the sense that they can, be, I don't want to say easygoing, but friendly in helping the types of developments. You got to have developers that want to put them in and find a product. That's one of the challenges. The teacher shortage, as part of my duties on the ISB Service Associate side, is I go to a lot of 8 division meetings every spring and fall, not just ours. So I get to see a lot of presentations, sometimes too. But Northwest Division last spring, had one, and it was about that, I believe it was the professor and support staff from ISU that gave the presentation with that similar survey and data information about the numbers that we were seeing. So ISP is well aware of it there, current class and stuff. Even though there's not an official resolution, I know they are lobbying for similar type things right now because every district is kind of board that they talk survey-wise is not board. But I think if we had a resolution somewhere along that lines, and to be honest with you, if we were to partner with some of if we came in as people in the Kishwaukee division or DeKalb County, and one more, DeKalb, Hinkley, or someone wanted to join with, or Burlington, or something came that's in our division, and we co-author, share a little bit of responsibility, I think it might carry a little.
I think something has to be done to somehow convince the state that it has an obligation to fund education, which it seems to be avoiding, like the play.
As long as they've been on the board.
They don't mind mandating to us about what we need to do, but even the Supreme Court ruling in Illinois that says that funding education means paying 50% of each student's tuition. We get 23% of our budget from the state of Illinois. That's woefully short. And I think that we're beginning to see on many levels the effect of this shortage over the many years that it's been going on. And buildings are an issue where teaching doesn't seem to be as attractive as a profession to most young people anymore. teachers, you know, because we don't have enough funds to pay, like the private sector would. And so, I mean, all these things are beginning to catch up, and at some point, if we don't address them, if the state legislature doesn't address them, then, you know, we're gonna just go over the edge of the cliff. We could, I'm all for putting together local efforts, but, and I think that's a great thing, and I think that will hopefully differentiate us from other areas, but, you know, the bottom line is that we need, you know, we need state representatives who are going to fund education. And until we get to that point, I think this is going to be a continuing problem for us. No matter what we do on a regional basis, it's going to be a continuing problem for the whole state. Well, it might not be for the North Shore communities or something like that, where they're much better off, but for the rest of us, it's going to be a problem.
I think we talked about one a year ago as well, right?
Yeah.
Local control.
So we'll,
If you could put together something, then we could
yeah,
circulate it.
and one thing that's been helpful, is, like you said, some of the streamlining that's been done.
Right.
Their legislative groups and whole crew have been much more helpful in helping you correct it so that it goes through smoother, it's in the right format, and you're not contradicting things that maybe we would not be aware of that are in place already. So that gives us the best chance for approval and support. So, but I think if we could, you know, even if we were the main author, if we partnered with a couple groups, maybe we got, you know, an entire Kishwaukee division sign on for the vast majority of them.
That would be great.
That would really, I think the state would notice that more than just, okay, that's one thing. We got this whole region that pushes for it. So, yeah, I'd be happy with that. They won't be due until, actually, I think they're not due until June, I think. So, but I don't want to wait till April or days out. That's right.
Anything else?
That's all I got.
All right. Next item then would be open discussion. Issues, observations, questions.
Division meeting 2 weeks away from Thursday. We're going. I'm your moderator of the program. We'll be on school security. Henry West. So actually, it's going to be a little bit different. It's not just going to be here's active shooter drill. Here's you know, we're going to go through and talk about the differences between what we're calling low frequency events to high impact versus high frequency events to low impact versus those that maybe are high frequency but are moving to high impact as well. So they're continuing to happen frequently, and that leads into behavioral issues and social emotional components of that are at the root cause of many of the other things that we find challenging as far as school safety. So it's going to be a little broader than just, hey, here's the way to harden your front entrance. It's not about that. It's more getting towards the root issues, and we're going to have a representative from the McHenry Police Department, not necessarily the SRO, but one of their officers, probably assistant chief. We have a building principal from another district. We have a security specialist, an architectural design professional who is not the independent separate person, and then I'll be moderating and filling in the workload too. So, for what it's worth, and hopefully it'll be a little more engaging than a board member talking around whatever the other topics are. The goal is to be overwhelming. So, and we'll have to take questions.
Can I jump in for just a second on that,
Sure.
on that topic? We've got a couple of those types of events at the middle school, so it's Mr. Flavin here, just want to recognize administration of the middle school and staff. A couple of events that have been challenging. So thank you for all that you guys have done. I know the Sycamore Police has been involved in that also. Great communication, great collaboration. I just want to recognize that there's been some frustration amongst the community, not getting enough information certainly understand that. We're not going to release confidential information, we can't do that. We'll release as much information as we can, we'll work with law enforcement when we make those decisions, but some things are just illegal, we can't release some of that information. Part of the other frustration too that's come up is that you don't want to jeopardize the investigation or gathering of information. So we work with the Sycamore Police on those decisions. Know that they're not easy. We would always love to share more information. Community would always love to give more information. But we are limited what we can provide. So I'm going to say that, but also recognize middle school staff and everything that they've done. You have one more thing to talk about this different topic. We're going to move the October 25th meeting to the high school as opposed to the middle school. We're going to recognize transportation staff. We're going to do an open house at the transportation building beforehand at 6:30. Not part of the meeting. It's not business related. Come and walk through the building. We might have a couple of buses pulled up there, and if you want to take a test drive, let me know. I'm sure we can arrange that. Get you certified. Then we'll move into the high school library as opposed to the middle school.
Other discussion items, issues, observations, questions? Future agenda items? We'll put that on the list. Any others? Is there a motion to go into executive session for consideration of matters related to appointment, employment, discipline, dismissal of personnel, student discipline, matters related to individual students, purchase or lease of real estate, and union litigation?
So moved. Second.
Moving second, roll call.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Shiloh?
Yes.
DeVito?
Yes.
Donda?
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, we'll move into executive session and then return to general session for. All right, we're back in open session. Is there a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
So moved.
Moved and seconded, roll call.
Shiloh?
Yes.
Davey? Yes. DeVito?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Donda?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Is there a motion to approve upholding the Board of Education suspension of student number 16477?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Davey? Yes. DeVito?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Shiloh?
Yes.
Donda?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.